What is up, guys? Sente here, and I have an awesome video for you today. So I got in touch with a YouTube streamer called Cinemabaroque. His content is really great. I highly recommend you check him out on YouTube. And he's a Tudon, and he does game reviews and absolutely loves doing game reviews. I checked out his channel. The reviews are really cool, and I really want to try to start looking at pro games with a little bit more intensity than the usual just, oh, that's cool. They're really good at this game. I'm going to close it now. Which I think I'm about the level that I can start doing that. I can hold a discussion with a Don player about a game of Go fairly well without having the completely wrong ideas about what's going on. So I think this is about the time. If you're a beginner, intermediate, or even an advanced player, this is an amazing game, and I think you guys will get a lot out of it. There is a ton to learn here. And I'm going to be going through the review with Cinnamon Baroque, and we're going to be taking sort of a Q and a Don's perspective. All right, sweet. Well, thank you for doing this, Cinema
Absolutely.
Baroque. I'm really
Yeah,
excited.
it's good to have a little tandem YouTuber action on the Go front.
Yes,
So,
because nothing like, reviewing games is really cool because I'm right about the point where I'm actually able to understand a bit of the main ideas about what these pros are doing. But it's really nice to get it sort of refined by someone who knows a little more about the strategy of the game.
yeah, definitely. And I've always really liked going over pro games, but it's something that you get a lot of situations where it can be really hard to figure out exactly what's going on. And there's certainly games that I've seen that I have no idea why they played certain sequences, even
Hmm.
after looking at them for a while. But most of the time, if you spend some time, you can generally figure out like kind of at least the general idea. But that being said, I kind of picked this game out because I thought it was a really neat example of very different styles and kind of a very influence-oriented player in Park Jung-won in this game.
Yes, very cool. A lot of players, especially like the beginning players, if someone asks you what their style was, they don't really know because they're so busy trying to figure out like what to do in the game that they don't really think about, oh, like this move would be in this style, and that's how I'm more comfortable playing. And also, a lot of players find it really hard to make good use from influence, especially the weaker ones. They like to build walls, but they don't really know what to do with them. And you guys are in for a treat if you don't know what to do with influence, because
This is pretty much a textbook case. So let's go ahead and just get into the game here.
yeah,
And we don't see anything. I guess, these facing 3-4 point along the top isn't super common, but this is totally playable.
yeah. I thought it was weird. I'd never seen this before, but it is a thing that people do.
It is
So,
definitely, and it's and this was actually a pattern that was in vogue in Japan in like the mid 1900s. But the much the same way as White's position here. There's if you come inside, it can be pincered as an extension. It's kind of the same logic, is that even though these are both on the 3-4, uh, there's no way for White to come in here super clean.
right.
And then I thought this was actually really interesting because typically we would see it's more common to see Black approach from the direction of their own stones,
Hmm.
like at A or B. But one way of looking at this position is that Black stones on the top at C and D are essentially low. They're on like the third line in terms of their relationship with the lower side. And since both those stones are low, the potential on the sides where A and B are is actually less than the potential between the two high stones on the bottom. So Black comes in to break up the biggest area.
Right.
And that's just kind of a subtle thing, but that's why Black comes inside instead of outside with this initial approach.
And so if C or D was, say, the other 3-4, either one of those was on the other 3-4, then a an approach on that
Would
same side would be good because that would blend
Exactly.
well.
Yeah, because it's kind of the initial direction of the 3-4 is in the open area. So the D stone is the initial area is at E. That's most important. So Black breaks up the big white potential. It's kind of
Hmm.
a pretty straightforward. And then you know this is something that used to be thought to be really good for black, and nowadays is just kind of considered to be an equal result because it used to be thought that this ideal shape along the bottom with the
Mm,
three circled stones here, that since the stone at K4 was an extension from both, that it was efficient, essentially. And it is
right.
to a degree, but the problem is that there's just so many
Invasions.
invasions, there's no real way
And it's
for
interesting too because back then, invasions and that sort of this very sharp style of play that modern Go is really wasn't a thing back then. So it
yeah,
makes sense
that's
as to why this was popular.
exactly. So, black gets like this is a good black shape, but black has got like no territory for these three moves at this point.
Hmm.
So, it in the modern style, this is considered pretty much, I think, a fully equal result, whereas it used to be thought that it was good for black. But just you have the loose pincer here. There's a lot of these other options are playable, but a lot of times you see either the very loose pincer to kind of take the most of the outside, or a very tight pincer.
Hmm.
But a lot of this,
Oh,
that
actually, if I could just grab control for a quick second.
yeah, for sure. I right click on your name in the upper
Ah,
right hand corner, and then I should
gotcha.
have control now.
I do. I do
Okay,
now.
cool. Okay.
Perfect. Perfect.
All
All
right.
right.
Technical issues aside.
We are good.
All right.
Okay, so another neat thing that I actually learned yesterday from watching a game uh, was that. So it's interesting for white to play here, and this is the normal thing for probably white to do because as I'm sure we know that really the objective for white is to try to break up black's framework should he try to create one to get to get the initiative rather since black
Exactly.
has the first move. And if you recall, if anybody remembers the orthodox opening where you'd see like an enclosure and then a black stone on the other side, a possible play could be here or here. But the problem with these moves um, is that if white plays here, he's giving black the choice of where black wants to push white, essentially. So if black decides to, make just some rough moves here and, develop this left-hand side and black decides, oh, I like this left-hand side, he might choose to make an extension and sort of pressure white this way, and vice versa. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that, White playing what he did is essentially saying, I'm not going to give you a choice on where you want me to make my base. I'm going to I'm going to develop this corner and that's that, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a really good point. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that the straight splitting move in general is a little bit out of favor now, is it just gives your opponent the option of which side to expand. And so a lot of times we're seeing, even when these stones are on the 4/4 point, like whites were, that
Hmm.
instead of just splitting, like it around K3, that the approach to not give your opponent the option is definitely more popular these days.
Cool. I'll give you control back and you can keep going.
All right.
Um, why can't I give you control back?
Uh, well, I can
Oh,
take control
oh,
back.
you can take
So
it back.
yeah,
Gotcha.
maybe I have to do that since I
Gotcha.
started the review here. Okay, so let's see. Let's get the pincer, and then this is really interesting. Typically you only see this two-space high approach when white wants to reduce the corner but keep Sente, and generally this is the most common response, and white will often just ignore this. And I
Mm,
thought this was an interesting maneuver. It kind of reminded me of the strategy white uses sometimes in handicap games to sort of isolate an edge stone and attack it.
right.
Because, obviously this black stone's not going to die, but white's created this situation, where it's kind of, if we look at, you know, if we just focus on, this situation on the top, you kind of have, white has a 3-on-1 advantage in this local local fight in certain ways.
Yes, and I would be very scared to have my stones so far apart as White's is.
Hmm.
But it's definitely there's enough open space where nothing's really in huge danger, and we can see White's attack isn't really I want to kill anything.
Hmm.
It's really just I want to gather influence and power for whatever other plan, whatever grand plan I have.
Exactly. And it's kind of, a neat sequence because, well, black takes a big corner, you know, and, I think a lot of us would see this sort of, getting these two circled stones in exchange for the big corner is probably not satisfactory to
Oh, I
most
would
of
be
us.
really I'd be freaking out very hard right now if I was White.
So it's just interesting, how, if you have a consistent plan. And this was kind of a section that we talked about is, the difference of heading towards C as opposed to heading towards A.
Right.
And, you kind of hit the nail on the head is that mostly, the, the B group in the upper left is rock solid. Like it's alive in the corner. There's no real way. I mean, it would take multiple moves for white to even start to pressure that.
Yep.
And whereas if we head out towards C, it's really easy to hurt the D stone. And at this point, white's just coming straight between us. I think this was the variation you laid out, and how
Yeah.
if we don't want to get absolutely crushed on the right side, we have to really damage those two stones.
Yep.
So
It's a really
definitely.
good lesson for direction of attack. Two things come to mind here, just remembering my days as a Q player, right?
Hmm.
If we were to try to, so there's three things I think um, that a double digit Q or someone at my level even might even do right now. One would be Tanuki as black, which is a mistake.
Hmm. Yeah, this is kind
um,
of important to get this
this is
resolved.
very important to try to resolve this black stone and make something out of it and keep white from pushing it around. So now if we decide we want to respond here, the other option would be something passive, like a two space jump, maybe at H17, um, maybe try to cut, maybe play F17 and then play the cut. Something a little less splitting. And once we decide that this is something we need to respond to, and we decide that this is actually a safe position, I do have a say in what happens. We can say that, it is much better to split white, or at least try to split white, than to just passively try to make shape for ourselves. So we've said, okay, this is important, and I'm going to respond to it in a meaningful way, in a dynamic way. And
Yeah.
then what you just mentioned without the direction of play. How do I do
Hmm.
it in a dynamic way that doesn't hurt my own groups? And so those are
Exactly.
sort of the things that you have to try to think about.
Those are both very good points. So, it's in the game, black comes out here, which, does, it there's pressure here too, because, white can't just let black separate without any compensation.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then this I thought was you know, kind of clever because it sort of links white together across the whole top. And there's some really good follow-ups here because this clamp at A is threatening this Hane and cut at B. So if black just ignores this, white can sort of keep following up with like very large moves.
Yes.
So,
Which
that's
I
kind
didn't
of
realize how large they actually were. Could you actually play that sequence out with the clamp?
yeah, and actually we get to the clamp
Oh,
in a
right, in a
couple
few
moves
moves.
too. So okay. So black, we were just talking about how this, stone, and now that white's got this thickness, we can see that the white pincer something, around, one, is going to put pressure on this black stone because it's basically white's covered
Hmm.
the black upper left. So black stabilizes, white expands the influence, and this also threatens an invasion right where black just played. So black defends. And see now white has this clamp.
Right.
And one of the things with this is that, um, before this move, if we go back a couple, there's some, issues with this black wedge. Um, the I'm not sure that it works right now, but because black can wedge on both sides, yeah, this isn't functional right now, but there's a lot of potential aji in this situation.
Hmm.
Um, and even to, a certain degree, black might just be able to make a position outside if need be. And that's
Right.
just good aji to have in the background. You wouldn't want to do that right now for no particular reason. But if there were some black stones out around this, we can see that the D group would be really weak if
Right.
black cut through like this. So
Not to mention white invested a ton of moves getting outside influence,
exactly, which
and to
is,
let black just be like, oh, hey, I'm gonna build here if that's okay. Like,
yeah,
this wouldn't be.
yeah, wouldn't be good. So, there's definitely, but the other thing that's important about this is that black has to be really, really careful about this cut at D after this attachment
Hmm.
as well. And because if white just takes the top side, then black really doesn't get anything at all over
Right.
here. And so that's just one of those things is like you can't let all of the triangled moves be for absolutely nothing. Like white can't get the territory and this outside influence and just swallow 3 stones, without black
Yeah.
getting some compensation.
Right.
So
And that was actually I didn't even realize that the Hane would actually successfully cut. But that's true. And if you're ever reviewing a pro game, and you wonder to yourself, like, that's a really small move. Like, why are they doing that? It's because there's a nasty life and death sequence that you just can't read because they're amazing at that.
yeah.
So,
And the other thing is, this is really going to vary depending on like any number of like factors around
hmm.
here. But just having to keep this Hane at D in the back of your mind, like it's going to like really keep black from doing anything aggressive against these
Right.
white stones over here. And so this clamp here, it looks kind of small, like only taking 1 stone, but it makes this white group thick in a way that it wasn't before. And there's big follow-ups too. So there's still ways to, like, utilize that stone moving
Right.
forward. And then black takes the big point on the side, which makes sense. It's pretty much, yeah, and this is like really easy. It's just the biggest area on the board.
It's one of the last big points. Yeah.
So it's kind of like if, we look at the area around A, or just like this is obviously the biggest, widest area, and then number two-ish is like kind of over here.
Hmm.
But A is, or the left side's obviously bigger, so
Right.
it's just kind of an important point. Uh, and white even stabilizes here.
Very
Um,
calm. I
it
really
is
love
very
how
calm.
calm white is in this game. I would have just tried to jump right in using those white stones up top and
Like
try to split that.
invade, like
Yeah.
around A or B,
Hmm.
yeah, or do something. Yeah, the other thing is that this two space extension, it also looks a little slow, but in addition to pressuring the A stone, it makes the slide at B gote
Mm,
because
yeah.
there's no like the follow up from B is to play C, but that would also be gote. I mean, black or white might respond to it here, but it's like actually instead of using letters, if we just see this, like white doesn't even need to respond to this. So white would play Tanuki once. And then if black did this, like because white has this stone outside and this two space extension, white could even Tanuki twice,
Mm,
you know. White could also just play here to take a solid base and territory. But
right.
it's one of those things. It's like if your move, if you're playing Gote moves that only have Gote follow-ups, it can be kind of a waste of time as you let your opponent like run around the board
Hmm.
playing what they want. So,
And I learned this the hard way, guys. Like, don't let your corner enclosure get surrounded on both sides. It's not fun. I didn't think that mattered at all until it just got invaded a bunch of times because I let that happen and I didn't really take measures to keep it safe. So extending from your corner is a great idea. So,
yeah. So the and black actually just stabilizes that 1 stone. It's like pretty straightforward so far.
hmm.
And white takes the last big point. Pretty standard. And here
Okay.
we come back into this. So now that black plays this direct cut at C is not exactly working uh, the way it plays out you know,
Mm,
once black adds this stone. And so it's just kind of like that Aji is like kind of going back and forth because like after white responds here, I don't want to spend like several minutes reading it out, but like in a real game, I'm sure they were both exactly aware of whether
mm,
this cut was working on any given move or not.
right.
It's at G17, this cut at A, because it's real dicey. And the other thing too is even if the cut doesn't capture the B group, if white gets to fill in, say, at C and D in Sente because they're reducing liberties and gets this
Yes.
perfect thickness in Sente, that's good enough.
That's very important because
Yeah,
a little black poke at D and then a cut one
exactly.
space to the right would be messing up everything white's trying to do right now.
Exactly. So it's just kind of this, very, cautious sort of filling each other. And here we see basically that black decides, okay, I'll just take this territory and you can get thick on the outside.
Hmm.
And then white turns to the lower side. And this attachment, this is a cool move that, a lot of times I think pretty much everyone knows the invasion at M3 in this shape.
Hmm.
But if you
If you
if
don't
you're
know, actually, why don't you just play it out super quick, just for anybody who doesn't really know how it
yeah,
would go.
the baseline variation of this would be to do this, and it's actually yeah, and there's a lot of ladders here.
Mm,
If white has the ladders working on both the right side and the left from this, then white can get a really good result by basically cutting and like wedging like this.
mm,
But in this case, I don't think white has. This would actually be an interesting situation to go through. But basically, in this variation, if that's not working, white can also just sort of like extend
from
and
both sides and then
and
go down.
live in some way,
Right. And
on
but
on
now the
this side.
problem with that, according to like White's global strategy, is like we're making black very thick in the area we're trying to develop.
That is exactly the case, is that up until this point, like the reason that white rejects this type of variation is essentially that we've spent the whole game building up influence, and this would basically make our earlier moves bad
Hmm.
because we would be playing an inconsistent strategy. And that's definitely a higher level concept, but it's kind of like, when you're in a situation where you're deciding, well, I can either like go to the right or go to the left. Once you go to the right, like unless you realize that you've just made an absolute blunder and it's not working, it's usually better to keep going to the right than change your mind and try to go to the left
Right.
halfway through because it's just not consistent. So, outside of it being like, oh, if I keep going right, I'll just get captured type of situation.
Hmm. Another fun little thing I like to do that people do is to reverse the order of moves. So if you were to imagine building this little white group that lives on the bottom and then making the white wall on top, that
Exactly.
wouldn't make any sense. Like, why would you do that? Make a wall facing a big black wall. So don't do it in reverse.
Exactly. So, now the danger is, and like particularly in this situation, is that instead of coming on top to cover, if black is strong, black can play this. And after this diagonal move, uh, and this diagonal move is probably possible because of the stone at A. If this A stone weren't here, we probably wouldn't be strong enough to play the diagonal move. But as it
Hmm.
stands, when we look at white trying to get out of this, like, white can cut on the outside and create a little bit of Aji, but really what we're looking at is white living like very, very small.
Yeah.
And at this point, black could probably take him. Now, we've also totally thrashed our own corner.
Yeah. We messed
So,
up a lot of things.
that's the danger is that a lot of times like this is sort of the proper response. But if black is strong, then black can make this diagonal move, and this gets black a good result
Yeah.
if there's not a way for white to just stop it. So
Right.
with the stone at A, I'm pretty sure that this would be working for black, and so this invasion would be an overplay in this
Hmm.
particular position. And so if the invasion isn't appealing, or let's say that, you think you're ahead on the board, or ideally you're counting and you're ahead on the board. Uh,
Flip a coin, heads. Okay, I'm ahead. We're
the
good.
this is a really clever way because the attachment seems severe, but this is actually more of a reducing maneuver.
Mm,
Um, because, unlike the full invasion, black can't just cover it. And if black does something like Hane, then this just creates a lot of aji for white because white can do some sort of like two-step thing like this. And white's going to press black down, and black's just going to take third line territory.
right.
And even if black takes all the territory along the bottom right here,
That's 18 points about, give or take.
I would actually say only 14
Mm,
because I would count what I would imagine essentially is the territory to come down like this,
right,
just in a real neutral fashion, you know? And
right.
then I would just count. And I don't know, my personal technique is to just count pairs of points,
Yeah.
and which is something that I picked up from a Go book at one point. But so I would basically count this as 7 pairs and just say roughly 14.
Hmm.
Um, and not really worry about who gets to play at A at this point, because that's gonna change things quite a bit.
Yes.
But that's well, I mean, already black has played 5 moves. If you play 5 moves to get you know 14 points, that's like a
It's
little
not
under
very
3
efficient.
points per move.
Yeah.
So unless this is the very end game, this is not an efficient use of black's resources
No.
to just take 14 points down here. So black, and a lot of times if your opponent attaches to you, well, that's good for white because white's weak, so white's attaching to a strong stone. But if you Hane, you encourage white to get stronger, and that's why that's our variation, and that's why black just extends, because this gives white like the least complications, the least forcing moves,
Hmm.
and now it's just a weak stone against a 2-stone wall. So
It's a
if
great asking question too. Like, what do you want to? I'm going to be going into the center somehow. Like, what do you want to do
yeah,
really?
exactly. And white's like, oh, I'll build up this corner over here.
Very calm.
Yeah.
Very calm.
And then press down. And this is, white takes Sente and just is kind of like, well, these 2 stones aren't exactly strong.
Yeah.
So let's see what we can do over here. Like this should all be Sente more or less for white. And then comes back to close off
Mm.
the lower right. It's kind of a nice sequence for white.
Yeah.
White
White got a lot
gets,
of good potential now. On
like
that right side.
gets to do what they want on the upper side, push down the lower side and seal off the lower right corner. It's pretty solid.
Hmm.
And then I thought this was kind of cool because it's like the initial instinct, of course, is to just block.
Yes.
But the only reason we would block is if, the A stone, or not, the triangled stone here were important. And obviously we can totally afford to lose that stone at this.
Yeah.
So the thing is it's like, oh yeah, we'll just reinforce our big area over here because if so what if black extends to A now? Like
Hmm.
that would be really slow to play A and follow it up with B. So we can just jump out over here. Professionals are really good at that. Like one of the things that I try to stay in the habit in, just because I know this from watching professional games, is just every single move being like, is that Sente? Do I have to answer that move?
Yes. And they play right on the edge of safety as well. Like we can
Yes.
see that there's those three white stones, that tiger's mouth up around Q15 or Q16
Mm-hmm.
is looking a little bit not as safe as it was with
Mm-hmm.
that push through. But white is still there's still a shred of it being able to be connected, and so white is like, that's not worth it to protect it
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Yeah. And then I also like this reducing maneuver here because like we can sort of see, this is kind of our, boundary line of our Moyo, and it's not even on that line. you know
Hmm.
it's pulled back from even there. So
Yes.
I think a lot of times for me personally, like my instinct is to play somewhere around like A,
Oh
or
yeah.
B rather, and just be like,
Fight
ah!
our way out, pull a 300.
Like, like, oh, my opponent's making some territory. I better create a weak group right away, because that will
Yes.
solve all my problems if I just have a weak group in the middle of all the stones.
No,
So
that's the way you do it.
that's my style, which I don't recommend, but but this is just, it's so collected, and I like that,
Yes.
about a lot of professional games. And I think that White's response to this is
This is
really
so
important,
interesting.
because the thing is it's like, you know, White can't capture the A stone directly, but if White adds some stones over by B, adds a couple stones maybe over at C, maybe at D, all of a sudden it looks like there's nowhere for A to run anymore.
Hmm.
But if White tries to, go at it right away, there's just no way. It
Hmm.
can run in too many directions.
I forget who said it, but I love this saying. It was like it's really easy to read a Q player's mind because they play exactly what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So like if we wanted to attack the A stone, we would shoulder hit it, we'd just do something crazy to try to just kill it right away. But they make moves that seem very unrelated, but they're just quietly setting up, and then they put their attack in. I mean, it
So,
doesn't work because the other person's a pro too, so they know what's going on, but still, it's amazing.
hmm it's definitely a lot of fun. And then some maneuvers on the bottom, nothing too major.
This feels more like making co-threats than anything, those moves.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. It's just building up, or getting the occasional forcing move in is always good. And then White just defends the territory on the right
Hmm.
at this point.
I mean, it's a large chunk. Black needs to do something drastic if he wants to keep up right now, and that
Yeah,
is the 3/3
and
invasions.
the 3/3 invasion, but also the upper left is big for Black.
Yeah,
And other than the right side, White doesn't, and that the right side is big, but that's White's only real territory.
that's true.
Because you can only maybe, you know, expect maybe another 10 on the left at this point.
About
Yeah, give or take. I'd say 10. Um, but the other thing though at this point, which is really important, is that like Black has no potential
mm,
anymore. Like there's no part on the board, like other than endgame at the edge, is the only place Black can make more territory at this point.
right.
And I think that that's something that, you know, is really hard to underestimate, because, Black has to hold White to like a certain amount of profit.
Yes, yes, and it's really hard for Black to do this right now because he's got maybe two places into this, and they're really not great places to enter into White's Moyo at all.
Yeah,
White can easily just like bend, like the tree bending in the wind, just like bend around and just keep making points no matter
exactly.
what Black tries to do.
You
And that's a
know,
very hard concept to understand when you're playing Go, is this balance of potential.
hmm
But that might be a reason White was playing so calmly, is because White sees that.
yeah.
And
And I think to a professional's eyes, it's fairly clear that, White has a good game. Like it's not won yet, but it
mhm,
definitely has a good game. And we can see Black is coming in as much as they can,
right, as much as they
just,
reasonably can. Yeah,
just poking in here. And of course, this threatens to take those 3 stones on the top,
right. Those three stones
largely.
need to be taken care of.
The Some minor, but see, at this point, White is sort of indicating that, like, in exchange for, sealing off the center, like White's perfectly happy to let go of the stones at A
That would
at
be a
this point.
hard thing for most Go players to do.
Yeah, it's definitely, a little non-intuitive, but if we just kind of look at the area kind of in here,
Yeah,
it's roughly, you know, the
12 points with the
plus
captures.
plus a capture, plus a couple captures, so roughly 14 points.
Hmm.
14 points is big, but it's still endgame.
Hmm.
It could be, now it would be a little bigger than that, because White would probably have a few points in here if White saved it, and whatnot. But we're talking large end game, and it's not the end game. It's still the middle
Hmm.
game fighting. So it's surprising sometimes, I think, how big like a group can be and still be like sacrificable,
Oh yeah.
still be a candidate for sacrifice.
And now we can see that black stone that was a great reduction stone. Before, it's looking very, it's looking much more pressured
Hmm.
with
Yeah,
those moves.
because white's added not
So black will
only
most likely give
these
this
three
up.
stones, but also built up this whole wall over here
Hmm.
that is largely the black stone at A can't really move out very effectively. I don't want to say that it can't at all.
There's the tiniest bit of potential there,
Yeah,
but
but
it's
the like one
far.
of the problems is that if you just move out directly, white just gets this Hane, and I mean,
What are you gonna? Yeah, what's black gonna
it's
do?
there's just not really like so that means black has to look at things like the diagonal move, and even then I feel like
You can
white
just, yeah, just wrap
just fall
around.
back because you've got these three stones at A, B, C, so this jump is, gonna work
His groups are strong. There's no
fairly
reason
well.
to fear pushing black onto those two stone extension.
Yeah, and then
So,
also after the circled stone right here, I mean, if black tries to come out, black's got nowhere to go,
hmm,
you know?
yeah,
Like that stone is like ideally placed. You can't even come
nope,
through the gap like that. So these stones are dead at this point. So,
right.
obviously black would never play that, but it just shows you that this strength over on the left is actually really important in terms of. Oh, okay, here's a better move. Speaking of ways that black can come out,
Yes.
and the professional will show us the proper way. And now that I see this is very clever. It's just aiming at that cutting point. That's kind of funny. White just ignores. It's like, well, if you want to take one stone, and that's
Mm,
always, especially, I think that's, in the double digit queue, in the high single digit queue, people are really bad about just following their opponent around the board. So it's like, oh,
yes.
my opponent peeped, so,
I've got to
obviously,
do something.
like,
But now we see white
needs to
chopping
cut.
off another place that black could have made something, which was that
Exactly.
bottom.
So now like this whole bottom area is like very, very reduced. And black gets to take uh
Well, not yet, but
not yet,
white
but
now chose. White is
it's
like, it is not worth it to save those 5 stones.
right. And it's actually, I think, we just said, this is probably worth, roughly, well, now these 5 stones alone are obviously worth 10 points directly, plus another, 5 or 6, say
It's
16
like
points.
15. Yeah.
But if, we just kind of look at this, whole, even just kind of this part of White's territory, this is bigger
Hmm.
than 16 points.
Oh yeah, those three
So,
lines are just 18 points. If white just
yeah,
got that line and then the two lines to the right of it,
yeah.
that's, yeah, 18.
So it's, this is actually a rare situation where White actually has enough potential in the center to have it be worth going after.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, your biggest moves are going to be on the edge, but White's been playing for influence this whole game, so they get to break the rules a little bit,
Hmm.
and this is good for coming into the center.
Making
You know,
shape,
this this is kind of the
reducing.
last
Yeah.
place that Black can come into the center in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
But White's just getting so much. It's kind of crazy. This is nice and aggressive. I like this
Yeah.
attachment, and I like that White is like, well, I'll just eat that one too. Which I don't
Seconds.
remember. Does White? No, White comes back
Well,
like
white, yeah,
this.
white
Yeah,
sacrifices that one to
one
just,
to so now White's got this like, really solid territory all the way down to the lower right corner.
and this is a great lesson too, because tons of people would have tried to just split that aggressive Blackstone off and kill everything,
Hmm.
which might not have worked out super well. If black used the Aji to try to find a way back,
Yeah,
white was very good on its counting. It makes a very calm decision. It's like, okay, fine, I will give you. I'm not giving you any points, but I'll let you take away, 10 of mine.
yeah.
But
And
that's,
if we kind of looked at, globally where, White had, potential to sort of make territory, out to this, and Black's only real reduction is in the triangled area.
Hmm.
and white got to seal off pretty much every other part.
Yeah.
So, not enough damage, I don't think. I feel like white's in a very commanding position at this point in the game.
Hmm.
And it's really weird too, because it's like up until like maybe like 10 moves ago, like white didn't really have this center territory solidly,
Yes.
but it just seems like because white was so thick, there's no real way. Because even like like at this
Here
point,
looks much more dangerous.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it just seems like white was able to handle this really effectively. White doesn't even connect against the peep, just resists. I always like that. The and then yeah, just sacrifice the one stone and seal off the Moyo.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It
take
takes
the
a calm player to play for influence, I tell you.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's very nice. And then now, I mean, at this point, like when you see people start making moves like this, it's like usually we're getting into endgame
Yeah, this is endgame.
because yeah, and black gets to take the stones on the top, but the it's Gote.
Hmm. Actually,
But
could we play through super quick what would have happened if if white ignored that corner extension and then chose to kill off the white stones?
oh, we did go over this, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did go over that because I
Yeah,
was very
I think
confused because I
okay,
was like, kill it now, like kill the
right.
white stones
So
now.
the initial thought that you mentioned is why doesn't white save this?
Hmm.
Um because this cut um isn't working directly. Because yeah, white can
So that was what
Atari
I just thought of. I'm like,
and come
this
out.
is fine.
And
Like, what
and
does white
that,
have to
that
do?
that's a good first thought. And at this point, we can see that either the black stones are gonna die at this point.
Hmm.
'Cause it's three to four, so black can't even try to like cut or anything.
Hmm.
White will just cut back and kill. So but the what is actually harsher in this situation is this clamp. And there's uh I'm this gets really complicated because if white tries to resist, and if white doesn't resist, if white just connects and black gets under, then obviously this is really good for black.
Yeah.
As opposed to, the cut wasn't working at all, so we got away with no damage, but now like this would be pretty big, so that couldn't happen. Uh Now, if white can descend like this, everything would be fine, but I'm thinking that after the descent, it just gets really
Dicey.
chaotic when black comes out like this. And the more I looked, the more it sort of seemed. So now we kind of have an issue as white because we need to save the A stone,
Hmm.
or black has just connected into our Moyo. Um, what was I? Yeah. And then again, this threatens to capture the 3, so we have to kind of come out with this ugly shape again.
Hmm.
uh,
Black's even making eye space now with these attacks,
and then
and then that.
when black comes back and does this, it seems likely that with a couple forcing moves in here, and I'll just kind of, this is just one example. It seems like uh, black might actually be able to just get 2 eyes in here
Yeah.
with
There's just
this.
Aji in that position that I
Yeah,
wouldn't have thought of with that clamp. So the clamp would be a great move.
exactly.
Hmm.
So, I wonder, yeah, it just kind of, it seems like something will materialize here, especially because we noticed that now that this is cut through here, that the group over at A is not necessarily 100% alive.
Hmm. This would be a
So,
disaster for white. So.
yeah, like at this point, like white has to kill this, and there's a lot of Aji with it.
Hmm.
Like for example, it looks like in some ways that like a move at like B would be Sente because you can't allow the Atari at C. And granted, there's only one eye at the B point, but we have to kind of spend a move to keep C from being an eye. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's just kind of a tricky situation.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variations, but I think that actually the clamp is likely to something in there is going to materialize for black. So that's why
That's why white
that's why
defended.
white takes the time to just defend that. And also too, I think at this point, so so a professional player looking at this situation, what they would look at is if I defend, if I play the simple thing and black takes the stones on the top, am I ahead?
Yeah, it's a great thing to look at.
And so they would count at this point, and they would see, okay, I would be ahead by 3.5 points or whatever, it might be. Then so then white would just play this safe variation.
Right. And
Now,
also, white doesn't just get that saved, he also gets Sente because black has to spend a move to kill that,
exactly,
which is worth a
so
lot in the endgame.
exactly. So white's going to get to play a big endgame move themselves, so it should be okay. And the other thing though is that if white counted this and realized that they would lose the game, then you know, they would play what you suggested, save the stones, and uh, get into this crazy variation that we're not sure if it works for either player, because if they don't get into this crazy variation, they're going to lose.
Right.
So it's kind of a risk analysis where it's like, well, we can get into the complicated thing that no human can read completely. Because if I don't do that, I'm going to lose anyway.
hmm
So it's just kind of so then, and that's one of the reasons that you'll see, and actually one of the reasons I think Go as a game is really well balanced is that the person who's behind is encouraged to play the more complicated variations.
Yeah,
So it's almost a situation where the further ahead you get, the more chances you give to your opponent to sort of catch up in a weird way.
in a weird way, yeah. Yeah.
So, but as it stands, yeah, black ends up taking the top, but just in Gote, and white kind of plays this out a little bit, comes
That's a
back
good forcing
here,
move, so black
yeah,
would need that.
and white gets to play a, kind of a clever little reduction right there.
hmm
The
Oh, that's big. So that was a big endgame
Oh
move.
yes, this is definitely big endgame. But the thing is that really, um, one way to look at this is that A and B are sort of like Mii. So
Yeah,
you know, because they're Gote for both players.
right.
So I wonder if
Black
black
decides
gets
to
the other
reduce a little more first,
right in the center, pushes in over here, all makes sense.
trying to
Um,
shred as many center points away as possible.
yeah, and then there's this move at A is looking for this potential snapback at B because
Yes.
there's a potential shortage of liberties in here. Very clever. And see, black did get the other point over here.
hmm
I think basically after white connected this, black just played a bunch of Sente moves and then came back and took this.
Right.
Let's
Great
actually go.
Sente moves too.
Yeah, let's just make sure that that's what happened. Oh no, I guess at some point white got to defend there. Oh, white also got this. Interesting.
Black's trying to stir up some potential with that shortage of liberty situation.
It definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and black is probably really looking for like any opportunity to do something tricky at this point
hmm
because uh most of the territory on the board is pretty clearly defined, so it would be clear that white was ahead at this point. Oh, and then this was another interesting point. Because in the actual game, black defends on the lower side, and then white gets this Atari and then this monkey jump.
Yeah.
And it's really obvious after the monkey jump that, black has less territory overall.
hmm
And the question, which I thought was really good, is and this is a great way to look at programs, is be like, well, what if black did this instead? And you'll see that, that's usually it doesn't work in one way or another.
hmm
But and the problem is that coming down here, I think your first off the top of your head variation was like this.
Yeah.
But the thing is that this is not a dangerous ko for white, and so white will fight this ko without thinking.
Mm,
And
true.
just because worst case scenario, white just connects here. And now black can, if black fills, this is really bad for black because
Yeah.
white can come like this and just do so much damage. Um, but so black will have to continue fighting the ko by doing something. Uh, well, for example, black could just get out of it themselves this way, but this is much, this isn't as good as the initial variation where they
Yeah.
much higher up on the board. So, you know, it, and if they wanted to fight the Ko, you know, like I said, white can, if white's ever worried about losing this Ko, white just connects here and black has to come back and Gote.
Yeah.
So, whereas if white can win the Ko, awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
That's unbelievably amazing. So
so
yeah.
it's just kind of like that little, that's one of the things that, Kos are so hard to evaluate, but one of the things to look at is what happens, when one side, wins versus, or if you can kind of sort of like de-escalate the Ko with a move like this.
Right.
Because we see now that, I mean, like black can't get anything from this
Right.
Ko.
White just upped the ante. White's like, well, the code's still here, only this time I can't lose it, because if I lose it, nothing happens to
Right.
me.
I mean, like if black just connects here now, it's like it's a wasted move essentially. So, there's not really a way. Um, so like much is in the game, black has to, play this to keep, this Atari from happening. And then after white Ataris, black connects, and then white gets the monkey jump. And black's like, oh hey, can I do that snapback thing? And white's like, no.
Yeah, I love it.
uh, no, you can't do
Yeah.
that. Uh, yeah, just a little bit of endgame. It comes back. There's the
You gain such a
stone.
respect for their counting abilities with these end game moves. Because
Yeah,
you
and a
know
lot of
that like
times, I mean, this is probably not necessarily better for black than just responding to the knight's move because probably white gets as much capturing that stone as like the capture at A is probably about as valuable as the capture at B.
mhm,
But I think black is trying to like create some kind of complication,
yeah.
just to do it the trickiest way possible. Uh, yeah, and then pretty much just a bunch of endgame. I don't think there was anything super
Nah, we're
interesting.
only a few moves away from
Yeah,
relegation now.
where he resigns, I'm pretty sure. But yep,
Yep.
yep. And this is where black gave up the game. I
And
mean, there's really
score
not much to
estimator
play at this point.
says white leads with 6.5 points. 5.5 points, actually.
Nice.
So I
So
mean, we were talking about how like White's in a great position. White was only ahead by 5.5 points.
yeah, and
Black
what's
didn't
really
play a bad game. Like
no, black did not get destroyed, but it's kind of interesting how to a professional like that's a really secure lead.
yeah.
And especially when it's like 5.5 points or so. Because what'll happen sometimes is, black will play some like, crazy move. And what you can do is you can just give up a couple points to play a simple variation
Hmm.
and just not let anything complicated happen.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I thought this game was really neat. You very rarely see a big Moyo like this.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of
It's
players.
very easy to see the styles of the players
Mhm.
in this game, which is very
Yeah.
cool.
So that was yeah, Park Jung-won and Cho Hen-seung, and yeah, I did really enjoy this game though. There was just a lot of fun
Hmm.
elements.
It's one of those games where, to me, the more I looked at it, the more I appreciated it. At
Hmm.
first, I was like, "What is Black doing? Like, this is crazy." I'm like, "Wait, he only lost by 5 points. Like, let's go." And then, like, you look at it a little more, and you're like, "Wow, they had amazing moves, both sides."
Definitely. So, definitely a lot going on, but yeah, so that was great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so tons to learn from. What do you think were the main ideas of this game that people can take away?
The one of the biggest things that I thought about this game was just not being too attached to stones.
Hmm.
White did such a good job with just giving up, different stones at different times, particularly in the upper right. There was like several sequences. Um, the
There was one of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're kind of like that right there to get this perfect thickness on the outside by giving up
Hmm.
the stone a day. And then basically, as we saw, like towards the end of the game, that's all of this A group is
Yeah.
eventually given up as well. Um, and this is another point with the sea stone here.
Hmm.
Just like, because we could sort of maintain a connection. I mean, it would go. I mean, obviously, black could capture it if we did this, but we could, see, you know, this would be a way.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's pretty obvious that this is a little over concentrated.
Hmm.
We have a lot of stones,
Not many
basically
points.
like eight
Yeah.
points at the best. So, but if these, stones on the top were further away, this would potentially make sense as well. I think you could also actually throw in at this point a peep right here and then connect. So black's alive now, but black does not have super efficient shape, you know.
Hmm.
So in a different situation, where we weren't trying to build into the center, this would be a thought as well. But yeah, basically just says I don't need the sea stone. It's small, and and then being indirect. This was kind of the other
Mm,
point where
yeah.
it's like, well, what are we going to do about the A stone? Absolutely nothing for like
Yes. That was great.
so, because it's like defend the territory, but it's just kind of like da 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 da. Oh, now maybe we'll attack, but
Right.
um, but yeah, and then basically after this, right here, where
Yep.
white gives up the A group, so it's kind of like, in sort of a bit of a summary, the B stone, the C stone, like these were all sacrificed to build this center area, you know.
Yes. Very
and it
cool.
and it worked well for white in this game. So,
It did.
once a stone's on the board, sometimes a stone has done its job and you don't need it anymore,
Hmm.
and it's kind of the reason we played the sea stone was to, build this wall.
Hmm.
So we don't have to worry about the sea stone being captured.
Yeah.
We took Sente instead of defending the A group to play the circled stone to
Yeah.
protect the center, so it's like that was bigger. The B stone, is forced black to have this like over concentrated shape in here.
Yep.
So, we're still getting utility. It's just but we don't need to save those.
Yeah.
It's not gonna do us any good if, black, does something to, pull out this one stone,
Hmm.
make sure that it's alive. So, but yeah, I think those were some of the main ones, is just like,
Yep.
and uh yeah, and just, capturing on a big scale.
Hmm.
Like,
My favorite part, wait, could you give me control for like quick sec?
yeah, for sure. Let me get you, give control. Yeah, there you
Yes,
go.
perfect. I just the calmness was my favorite bit because it was a very tough thing for me to get over the fact like to just not overreact at things. So like even from this beginning, so many players, like probably even from right here, would have just done something like this.
Hmm.
Or, tried to split this because they're like, oh my God, what happens now? But White's like, it's fine. Good, that's
Hmm.
fine. And now I bet a lot of players would try to invade right away and just eliminate any potential for invasions like forever, like what we
Hmm.
were talking
I,
about.
I could see people doing that.
Oh yeah.
That would be way
Especially at
easier
my
at this
level.
point.
It
Like,
would be abundant. 10 out of 10 they would do that.
like if you invaded, if I were black right now and you invaded, like I would automatically Tanuki,
Hmm.
like for several moves. Like even
Yeah.
if you spent like 4 moves like thrashing the lower side shape, like I would think that I would get more playing 4 moves on the open board.
Right. And it was just such a calm game by White. We don't see White
And,
overreacting, going on these crazy
and
attacks.
it's also kind of cool, now that you mentioned that, because it's like white basically gives black everything they want in this game.
Yes, yes, he really does. He
It's
doesn't
amazing.
contest anything that Black's doing.
Yeah. I was kind of like, I'm going to build this influence over here.
Just forces Black to do what Black wanted to seem to want to do in the first place,
Yeah.
and just followed his own plan. It was cool. Very cool game. Very cool game. Oh well, that went great. Thank you so much for showing me this game. For agreeing to do the review. I think I learned a lot, and it was a really
Awesome.
really great time.
Yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed doing this. So it was very fun to have some tandem commentary.
Hmm. definitely would love to do some more things like this. If you have any other
Yeah,
games, send my way. We can review each other's games. That'd be really cool. But to you guys, to all the people watching, I hope you learned something. Definitely be sure to check out Cinema Baroque's reviews. He does some really great stuff on his channel. If you have some
absolutely.
time. hmm
All right.
And hope you learned a lot. And I will see you guys on the grid. And Cinema Baroque, thank you.
All right, absolutely. Catch you guys next time.
See ya.